Welcome in to the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo back with Zach Robinson. This is your QB analysis or big time throwcast edition of the PFF podcast. Don't forget, if you guys were subscribing to the big time throwcast, it's all here on the PFF Pro podcast. Every week, Zach and I will dive into quarterback play from around the NFL. We finally had a bit of a bounce back week here, Zach. It was all about defense the first couple weeks, but I think the quarterback play stepped it up a little bit after a couple subpar weeks.
QB's got it going. Yeah, there was some high scoring games. Obviously, we saw maybe some QBs were not used to playing at such a high level. Case Keenum up there, and some of these other guys. So it was a good week for the QBs to get back on track.
Yeah, definitely some fascinating names at the top of the PFF game grades this week. And as we always do, we're going to take a couple of quarterbacks or 5 quarterbacks and dive really deep into their games. We're going to start discussing the great comebacks, 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers both lead their teams to comeback victories on Sunday. We're going to get into kind of the art of the comeback and what it takes and what might change down the stretch, get into Zach's brain about some of that fun stuff. And then we'll dive into Marcus Mariota, Blake Bortles, and Deshaun Watson. Hey, I didn't even realize it was so AFC South heavy, but all of those guys had interesting games to dissect. But then stay tuned. We'll fly through a few other quarterbacks at the end to give a quick synopsis of how well they played. Before we dive in, though, do want to tell you guys about our friends over at DraftKings. Football season has begun, but it's not too late to get closer to the game you love with DraftKings 1 week fantasy football. This Sunday, DraftKings is hosting a $100,000 Pick'em contest that is totally free to enter. Pick'em is the newest way to play 1 week fantasy football, and drafting your team is faster than ever. DraftKings has organized players into 8 tiers, so all you have to do is select one player from each of those tiers. Choose between public contests with big cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against a group of friends. DraftKings also has beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill level. The best part is you get to draft a new team each week without any commitment. So get to DraftKings.com now and use the promo code PFF to play in DraftKings' free contest with $100,000 in total prizes on the line this Sunday. That's promo code PFF to compete for your share of $100,000 in total prizes. The contest is totally free to enter, so why wouldn't you try? DraftKings, the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for more details. All right, Zach, we're talking about comebacks. And, it does seem like the best quarterbacks in the NFL do a pretty good job playing down the stretch. But even then, there is this separation factor. Tom Brady's been doing this for a number of years. We just saw what he did in the Super Bowl last year, 28-3, doesn't even matter. Finds a way to make a number of big-time throws down the stretch. Aaron Rodgers comes back and not only leads Green Bay past Cincinnati to tie them up, to tie the game in regulation to go to overtime, but also leads the comeback in overtime. So let's just discuss the comeback in general, whether you're down 7 or 14 or even more than that. Is there a different mentality in the fourth quarter? How do guys play differently? How do things change when you're in this comeback situation late in the game?
I think with these guys, it's just something from within, the innate ability to just realize that, hey, this thing's all on me. You got to make every single play, and these guys they have it. You hate throwing things at the it factor, but it's a real thing, and everybody can feel it, on the team, on the sideline. If you've got a quarterback like that, you can just feel it as soon as they take the field, or maybe it's an opponent that you're playing against, like, oh crap, here we go, here's Aaron Rodgers, and you almost just are expecting that they're going to make these plays down the stretch. But I think a lot of it is you kind of get one positive intermediate throw, or one kind of 15 to 18 yard gain going, and then after that it's like, okay, here we go, and each guy kind of does it in a different style, but it's usually kind of that one positive intermediate throw to get it going, and then everybody kind of holds their breath and says, here we go.
I do remember, I think it was Brett Favre said something like, just get the first down, get the first down, right? Get the chains moving, get some kind of rhythm. It sounds simple, but look, watching Brady do this throughout the years, there's definitely very little panic in the way he plays, other than the fact that, hey, we might need to take a couple extra chances here. But even then, first down, second down, take what's given. Don't necessarily force something just because you're down. The other thing, too, when you're really late in the game, 2 minutes is like an eternity in the NFL, it seems, especially if you have timeouts. I feel like a lot of quarterbacks will take the unnecessary chance earlier than they need to, where the best quarterbacks are like, all right, we've got 2 minutes driving down the field is plenty of time. How does that factor in as well? Your time and your timeouts, and when to take those necessary risks.
You're exactly right. The experience goes a long way in these type of situations. We see a guy like Matthew Stafford that now he's a pretty seasoned guy, and he's kind of thrown himself. Obviously, last year had a bunch of plays, and even on Sunday. So I think just the experience, clock management, like you just said, I don't need to take this risk. I can take this gain of 3, and let's just keep the thing going and move on from there. But I think the biggest thing with most of these guys is they can all make out of structure plays. It's not always going to be going great in the rhythm of the offense, and things are moving faster than kind of what it usually is. So you need those out of structure plays, and then if you're a guy like Tom Brady and a true pocket guy, you kind of need the out of structure but staying within the pocket and sliding and move around to find some of those bigger throws down the field.
All right, let's dive into both Brady and Rodgers individually, and we'll discuss their specific comebacks separately. So Brady's game against Houston, statistically off the charts, and I think that's in part because I think his worst plays really were just were the fumbles. He didn't have any interceptions. He had a couple risky fumbles, one of which landed right in Jadeveon Clowney's hands for a fumble 6, if you will. He fumbled right into his hands. He returns it for a touchdown. That was a risky pass, but statistically, an outstanding game for Brady, capped by the game-winning touchdown. But he was 25 for 35, 378 yards, 5 touchdowns, 146.2 passer rating, just barely the number 2 PFF game grade for the week, behind Case Keenum, who you mentioned at the top, had an outstanding game. But what'd you think of Brady throw for throw in this game, and just general thoughts on how he looked against the Texans?
He's great. You mentioned the pocket fumbles, some of those extending the play and those types of deals. But, I think the biggest stat that jumped out was 72.6% of his yards were in air. So he wasn't, using his underneath guys for catch and runs opportunities. Most of this stuff was big throws down the field, up the seams, and outside the numbers. So he was great. I mean, arm strength looks great. The final throw, the final play that sealed it, the strength that he has with Clowney underneath his arm. They locked right arms together when he came through on that throw, and still had enough strength to get it to the sideline and beat the safety with the throw. So not much more you can say about Brady, but just a couple of those fumbles were a little bit uncharacteristic, I guess.
Yeah, before we talk about the fumbles, because I do have a little theory on that one, but not only the game-winning throw under pressure, but I think it was his first throw of the game, or one of the first plays of the game, deep pass to Brandon Cooks down the left sideline, over 40 yards in the air. He got smoked by 2 Texans too.
Yeah.
Middle of the throw, and in general, if a guy's making a throw and he gets hit, especially if it's blindside or if it's something that he just can't really feel for whatever reason, we'll generally absolve a guy, and a lot of times you see a guy get smoked and the ball flutters and falls incomplete. I mean, he got smoked the same way a lot of these, what we would chart as hit as thrown, at about the same time where we would chart hit as thrown, and he's still putting it 40-plus yards in the air, just about in stride to Brandon Cooks, and then the game winner, as you said, they locked arms in the air. How do you have the type of strength to make that throw under duress to get the ball there? I think with arm strength, a lot of people just look at pure zip in a clean pocket, but it's these types of throws, the ability to get the ball out there when you're getting crushed. Absolutely amazing. Brady's had a few of those. He had a few against the Saints as well, and his numbers under pressure so far this year are literally off the charts. It's only 3 games, but 148.6 passer rating under pressure so far this season.
Jeez.
Unbelievable right now. Probably unsustainable, but really unbelievable. How do you make those throws when you're getting absolutely crushed?
I really don't know. Some just have a crazy amount of arm talent to do it, and then others are just so balanced and time up their kind of lower body and upper. I think with all the off the field work that he does in the off season, working on his mechanics. I mean, there's nobody that's more obsessed with his mechanics, obviously, than Brady. I think all that stuff, it's hard to see exactly how or quantify exactly how much it's helped, but gosh, you can tell, especially on those tight pocket throws that we're talking about, that he's just so synced up with his entire body that maybe he doesn't need, his entire arm to get into it because his body's helping him out so much.
Let's talk a little bit about the bad, and then we'll talk about the comeback a little bit. So early in the game, there was times. We'll get to J.J. Watt in a second. Last year, I was sitting out here on here saying, look, Tom Brady has gotten better at the age of 39. Now he's 40, and in part it's because of how well he can extend plays. And we talked about how in 2014 there were interviews where Tom Brady said, hey, I don't really need to be Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, but I do need to do a better job of extending plays and winning late in the down. And he actually did that over the last couple of years. And if you look at his numbers on plays lasting 2.5 seconds or more, all of his numbers have gotten better and better and better over the years. We're talking about a guy who's usually most comfortable getting the ball out of his hand quickly. So we're talking about a Hall of Fame quarterback who got better and has gotten better over the years. And added this dimension to his game. But there were many times last year where he would hold the ball, and really try to milk every play, which was different for him. And right. Most of the time he got away with it, but there was a couple times I said, you might be holding the ball a little bit too long, Tom. And I felt like it might come back to bite. And this was the game where it didn't come back to, they didn't lose the game or anything, but it did lead to 3 fumbles. And I thought all 3 fumbles were plays where he was resetting or he was knowing that he was under pressure and still trying to make that late play. And one of them was a fumble that led to a touchdown. They recovered the other 2 fumbles, but it was a little risky and riskier for what Brady usually does. What are your thoughts on that risk-reward element of, look, there's a lot of big plays that he's created too the last couple of years, but also those late fumbles that could come back to bite?
Yeah, no, I think what you just said is perfect. It's it's hard to find that balance. Last year it worked out where there was some deep shots down the field where he's, like you said, he's holding it, and he's getting smoked as he's throwing. This time just didn't quite feel those guys or thought that maybe they were going to get picked up or whatever when he was sliding through. But I'm sure his meeting with Belichick this week, that'll be brought up a little bit, say, hey, man, that we like these extend the plays type of stuff, but we can't have these things. But there's some risk reward, and it just so happened that this week it showed up 3 times, which usually doesn't happen, obviously.
You wrote a note here in our trusty Google Doc, which was something that I noticed very early in the game. It says he was very aware of J.J. Watt the entire game. I noticed it early. You could almost see him peeking around the pocket. The Patriots were aware, too. That very first deep ball that he did hit to Brandon Cooks, they had, first off, backup right tackle Adrian Waddle starting, and that's scary enough going up against J.J. Watt, but they kept Rob Gronkowski in, and not even to chip J.J. Watt, it was a pure double team. Like, Gronk was manning him up, and Waddle was right there. So they were very aware of J.J. Watt for much of the game. That was their very first deep pass where Brady hit Cooks down the sideline. They double-teamed Watt. And a couple times you could kind of see Brady feeling Watt even when he wasn't there.
Right. Yeah, it was weird. There was one underthrow to Brandon Cooks on the left sideline that you could see he was holding in the pocket, and he gets one quick glance to the right and then fires it, and it ends up kind of all out of whack and ended up short. But the 3rd and 18 play to Amendola was when it kind of worked in his favor. He felt the pocket. He drifted away from Watt and then was able to step up into the pocket, and Watt was just barely right behind him, and he made that throw. One of the biggest plays of the game, obviously, to Amendola there. But very, very aware of Watt, and rightfully so.
So that was the play. It's 3rd and 18, and this is where when you start to doubt Brady and the Patriots, 2 long 3rd down conversions on that final drive. They had to drive 92 yards, and the offense really struggled early in the fourth quarter and put them in a position where early in the fourth, they needed a field goal to win it. And because they struggled early in the fourth, they got themselves into a position where they needed a touchdown, and they had to drive 92 yards. Still managed to do it. That 3rd and 18 on the deep crosser to Amendola was a key play. And then, of course, the play to Cooks, where Brady puts the ball in a perfect spot right along the pylon in the end zone. Pretty incredible stuff. Anything else as far as that comeback and those big plays that he was able to make down the stretch, or anything to look for going forward? And we'll move on to Aaron Rodgers.
Just the amount of plays that are coming down the field and in the air, I think have been pretty impressive so far. So the passer rating under pressure, I think he started off last season almost at the same clip, or just slightly below, after he came back from the suspension. But if he can just sustain it a little bit, obviously we plan on seeing that thing jump down. But the playing under pressure has been pretty incredible.
Through 3 weeks, we've got one turnover-worthy play for Brady as far as throwing the ball goes. We had a dropped interception against the New Orleans Saints, and then the two of those fumbles, very turnover-worthy plays on Sunday. So definitely something to keep an eye on with the fumbles, but also Brady's ability to take care of the ball when throwing. Let's go to Aaron Rodgers, and we talked about kind of the anatomy of a comeback and what your mentality is and all of that fun stuff. And if you look at historic fourth quarter comeback numbers, a lot of the top quarterbacks sitting at the top of those lists, you've got Peyton Manning up there and Tom Brady, of course Dan Marino and Joe Montana, if you go way back. But everybody compliments Brady for how good he is at it and all of these other top quarterbacks. But Aaron Rodgers has taken a lot of criticism throughout his career for just not being able to consistently bring his team back when necessary. And there's definitely been bouts the last couple of years where he's been fine. I mean, Dallas in the playoffs last year, incredible play down the stretch, and then on Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. But what are your thoughts on Rodgers and his mentality? Does he approach comebacks a little differently than, say, a Brady or Matthew Stafford or some other quarterbacks? What are your thoughts on Rodgers and his style in these situations?
Yeah, I think you saw some of it come up just last week. He's always been not always, but there are times when he gets hesitant to let something go, and he's relatively safe with the ball, and those things. I think that shows up in comebacks sometimes where maybe he's got a throw that he can let it go in the timing rhythm of the offense, and he chooses to escape. But then when he's on the move and making the out of structure plays, he's the best that there probably has ever been. So his style is a little different. We talked about how making out of structure plays is just part of those big comebacks, and you got to be able to do it, and nobody does it better than him. So heavily reliant on those plays, and they showed up for sure on Sunday at a big play to Jordy Nelson and some other big plays that kind of got that offense going there on that last drive.
There was definitely a few plays where I was like, all right, he's definitely feeling it. But maneuver in the pocket, doing some of that magician work in the pocket and just kind of flipping balls up there and, just playing like Aaron Rodgers, maybe the most talented quarterback of all time when it's all
he
said
didn't play
and done.
like that pretty much the whole game. He was, wasn't trusting his protection, all that. But you're right. When he started just kind of dancing around and you see his feet start moving, you're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you about early in the game. He had a pick six, which he never has. Aaron Rodgers is so good at taking care of the football, has a pick six against William Jackson, and William Jackson's pretty awesome. He was one of our highest graded cornerbacks coming out in the draft last year, but Rodgers is always so good at taking care of the ball, and when you see what he can do down the stretch, when he does loosen up a little bit, and you see how special he can be making plays on the run, inside structure, outside structure, that he fires the ball up the sideline for that big play that set up the game-winning field goal. What was it early in the game that made it such a struggle against a Cincinnati defense that's actually been pretty good so far in the early going?
Yeah. No, they watching it, you really just think that they got out-schemed a little bit. Plays just weren't really working. There was a lot of zone coverage, and maybe he was hesitant to let a few things go, but for the most part, it was. The coverages weren't matching up that well with the plays, and you mentioned the pick that he threw, and the pocket was closing in. Carl Lawson was getting after getting after the passer. I think he definitely started feeling that, and there was a good portion of that game in the second and third quarter where he wasn't letting a lot of things go, and you could see him, looking at the rush a little bit. So those were definitely factored in, and then obviously down the stretch made a ton of big plays. The 3rd and 9 sprint right, comeback in tight coverage to Jordy Nelson, and then the game winner. So he made up for it at the end, but there was definitely periods of that game where it wasn't very good.
Do you think it's just a matter of not having his starting left tackle, David Bakhtiari, out there? We saw that against Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean, Kyle Murphy was starting. Murphy gave up 2 sacks and 7 hurries. Just looked overmatched the last couple weeks at left tackle. Is that pretty much the
it's
basic
gotta
gist
be
of it?
Yeah, it's gotta be these. He like Tom was, like Brady was very aware of Watt. You know where the weakness is in your protection, and as soon as it slips up a few times, you can definitely start feeling it, and that's definitely what the case was.
So we've already discussed some of the big throws down the stretch, but in overtime, Rodgers just zips that ball up the sideline, cover 2, I believe, at least to that side, hits Geronimo Allison for the big play that sets up the game winner. I mean, just incredible arm, and when it comes down to it, what Rodgers can do on the move or with his arm and challenging the defense down the field, just so difficult to stop when he's starting to let the ball go.
Yeah, no, you said it. They had it was my mistake. I think I said the game winner on the quick right, but that was to tie it, to send it to OT. You're right, the big play to Allison, and then we just see him do it so much. But most of his big plays on that final drive, going into overtime, were on the run. They weren't really in structure. He was playing on the move and sprint out and out of structure plays, but can't say much more about the guy. I mean, he was pretty incredible down the stretch.
So far this season, Rodgers has only attempted 11 deep or 20-plus yard passes. That's only 8.2% of his attempts. That's 24th out of 28 qualifiers in the league. So, for a guy that we know can do some special things down the field, hasn't really pushed the ball down the field. Also, 3rd highest percentage of his yards have come after the catch, behind Kirk Cousins and Alex Smith. And I know Rodgers has always been a guy that picks up a lot of yards after the catch, and a lot of that's because Green Bay just runs so many screens. They run a lot of slants, and they run a lot of that, RPO stuff. Just get the ball into the flat, get it to Randall Cobb as quickly as possible. But any thoughts on that and their scheme and how many free yards they're picking up for Rodgers, so to speak, after the catch, and their ability to drive the ball down the field a little bit more as the season unfolds?
Right, yeah, you see that play so much where they're in trips and they just fire to the guy in the flat. He's got 2 blockers out. That's still a big part of their offense. I think the big thing that's been missing has been the long play action, kind of move the pocket and reset the pocket on the right and try to get the chunk plays down the field. We saw they ran a flea flicker that they got a big play on last week to get some of those deeper chunk shots. But for the most part, those plays just haven't been there. Jordy hasn't really separated as much, and Devontae Adams hasn't got loose down the field. But as we've seen so many times, it's just a matter of time before that gets going.
Overall, it was a good bounce-back game for Rodgers because the Falcons game 2 weeks ago didn't really take care of the ball that well. Other than the pick 6, I think he was pretty good in that department against Cincinnati, right? I don't think any other big turnover-worthy plays that stood out.
It was all pretty careful with the ball from that point. Yeah, hesitant to let stuff go, and then the plays down the stretch.
And the general theme on this one was Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, 2 of the best of all time. They make incredible comebacks, great plays down the stretch. It was really fun to watch. And, a lot of people were criticizing the NFL, comparing it to college football product and saying it's not as exciting. But both of these games with 2 of the best of all time on the field, a great sample of what NFL products can do in games that people didn't think were going to be that close either. And, I think that's
right.
Part of the beauty of the NFL as well. Texans in New England, Bengals in Green Bay, and it still came down to the last couple plays of the game. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. So I'm just saying, appreciate watching these guys play.
Yes.
While you still have 15 more years of Brady, but just appreciate while they're out there. All right, a couple there's a couple other quarterbacks. I didn't realize it, like I said, that we're just going to go all AFC South here. But let's go to Marcus Mariota. We've had a lot of Titans fans asking about Mariota and his grades and stats and all that stuff. What do you think of Mariota's game overall on Sunday?
Yeah, I don't think it started off pretty bad. Was missing a lot of throws, just looked out of sync, out of rhythm. Really, the whole, just getting anything going in the passing game. And then second quarter, he started lighting it up. He found some rhythm, found some easy throws. The play actions were there. I think he's played okay throughout the season. I think kind of wanted to see a little bit more and kind of that next jump that we talked about in the off season. But I think the main theme that you've seen so far is just his play in tight pocket, trying to hit some of these intermediate routes. Just has not been there, and he's overthrown a bunch of them. And his adjusted accuracy under pressure is 46.7 right now, 46.7%, second lowest among qualifiers, just above Carson Wentz. So that's kind of where he's at right now. I think. There's been obviously some good, and then you just want to see him make just a few more plays here and there in that intermediate level when he's under duress.
So when we discussed him this summer, we went QB by QB, gave everybody about a half hour of in-depth breakdown. We kept coming back to Mariota's footwork, where you were saying, look, this guy's been in the shotgun for years now, and he still seems a little bit off with his footwork in the shotgun. And then we were saying, for a guy that's so athletic outside the pocket, he had one of the lowest completion percentages outside the pocket last year in the entire NFL. It just never made plays. There were a couple plays this Sunday where it looked like he broke the pocket and just wasn't looking to throw. And I feel like that could be such a great weapon for him, that part of his game that he could enhance. Have we seen any improvements on footwork or out of structure plays, or to your point, is it the same old so far for Mariota here in year 3?
I think it's been pretty much same old. The footwork looks better on some concepts and some stuff that they're doing. Still looks a little out of sync and gets his feet kind of just. He's such an athletic guy. You want to see him just play with a little bounce, a little rhythm. But the out of structure play, you're exactly right. Some of those plays he's just not letting go when he's throwing on the move, and I think it is maybe a mental type thing where he's not 100% confident in sometimes how he throws on the move, and he knows he can pick up 4 or 5 with his legs, and so he's doing that. I think he's has some drives that are peak him. They come out 1st and 10, long play action play. Nothing's there. It takes off for 4 yards. Then he throws a quick game to make it 3rd and 3, and he comes back with a perfect strike on 3rd and 3 to move the chains. And so that's like his game right now. And so it's just taking some of those to the next level where he hits some of those intermediate shots and like you said, playing on the run a little bit better.
As far as his game grade on Sunday, it was right around average. So I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it ended up just about average. He made one throw, come back along the sideline. Oof. I don't know how he put it into that window. Eric Decker along the sideline, Richard Sherman in pretty much perfect coverage. Like, I don't know if he really could have covered that any better. And Mariota put it right on Decker. I think the ball was just a little bit over the sideline. I mean, it was the perfect spot where Sherman couldn't get it. Certainly a big-time throw. That was pretty incredible.
It was unbelievable. And that kind of got him going into a little bit of a rhythm there. As you were saying, he struggled early in the first quarter, but gosh, that was one of the best throws of the week, no doubt.
And the scouting report, for me at least, on Mariota coming out of Oregon, it just misses a few too many easy throws. And I think you said he started out poor. That's what I was seeing. And then you have things like, okay, he has an open seam route, misses it, and then comes back. There's a busted coverage the next play. Hits a pretty easy throw for a touchdown. So to me, it was one of those games where if you go throw for throw, it all kind of evened off and was just okay. But it was one of those games where it worked out. If you missed a throw, there'd be an open one there for you next time to kind of make up for it and score a touchdown. Even though, like, hey, just hit the first one. He had an open touchdown the first time up the seam and missed it, and then it took a busted coverage on the next play to get into the end zone. The one other thing too. And also, this is a little push for Sam and I, our little Well Actually segment for Sports Illustrated. We're going to be talking about...
Check it out.
Yeah, thanks, man. We're going to be talking about the Seattle pass rush and the lack of Seattle pass rush. Mariota, I could not believe this number when I saw it. He was pressured twice on 35 dropbacks in the entire game. He was 0 for 1 in one scramble. 0 for 1 with a scramble on his 2 pressured dropbacks. Seattle did not get to him at all, so playing from a pretty clean pocket in this game.
That's incredible. Yeah, and some of that, the running game, all the misdirection and things, Seattle was all out of sorts in what they were looking at and their keys. And gosh, I had no idea he was only under pressure. That's unheard of, I'm sure, from the last 5 or so years we've seen from that Seattle defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's also part of what makes Mariota a quarterback that you don't mind building around or would want to build around, is what he does bring in the run game. And when you have a good offensive line and Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray back there, a lot of things that this offense can do. We're just looking for a little bit more consistency on a throw-for-throw basis from Mariota. Quick break, guys, to tell you about our friends over at Draft. That's draft.com or Draft in the App Store. It's a great new way to play fantasy football. I've got a couple full season leagues going where it's best ball. So they take your best players every week. You don't have to worry about waiver wire. You don't have to worry about trades or injuries. You just draft your team and forget it. They still have new games starting every couple minutes. You can do head-to-head drafts, 3-person drafts, 6-person drafts. And the best part about this is you can win real money. They even have tournaments and other various things that you can join. It's not just NFL. It's MLB, NBA, NHL, golf. Just get to Draft in your app store or draft.com. Go check it out. And today, if you sign up, make your first deposit, use the promo code PFF, and you will get a free $3 game. So a free $3 game to play around with. See how you like it. But I promise you guys are going to love draft.com, just like I do, playing with multiple teams, multiple tournaments, and it's a ton of fun. So games continue to start every few minutes, so check in every day. And don't forget to use your promo code PFF to get your first $3 deposit over at Draft. Everybody at PFF is having a lot of fun playing over there. We've been doing it since August, and they've been a great partner to the show. So please check them out. All right, Zach, staying in the AFC South with one of the bigger surprises of the entire weekend, the Jacksonville Jaguars in their London home game absolutely demoralize the formerly 2-0 Baltimore Ravens. Blake Bortles, the subject of all sorts of controversy over the last couple of years. He has a great, bounce back in 2015. Looks like a serviceable quarterback. He was pretty terrible last season. Early this season, looks like it was a continuation of that. He's kind of been hot and cold, and then it was a pretty strong game for him on Sunday as Jacksonville dominated the game. So what do you think of Bortles and how he played compared to some of the other games earlier this year?
I thought he looked good. He's playing some pretty good ball overall. The Week 2 game was a little down. Week 1 against the Texans, he played fine. He just didn't make the big mistake. And I think that was that again last week. We've seen the Ravens take the ball from every quarterback they've played, and that was a big thing. He just did not make the big mistake. He can make some plays that we've seen and make some throws, but he was more consistently accurate this week, and for whatever reason was just kind of feeling it and made some good plays. I mean, his motion actually does look better,
crisper. Crisp,
yeah,
good word.
Crisp is. I think that's. I don't know if that works with Bortles to a T, but
crisper.
Crisper is probably a little more fair. But yeah, he was feeling it, moving around a little bit and making some plays, but. It's definitely crisper and a little bit tighter as well.
So he threw 4 touchdowns. The one that you pointed out to me was, I think it was only a 5-yard touchdown in the game book, so to speak, but it was a tight window throw, one of 3 to Mercedes Lewis, one of 3 touchdowns for Lewis. And when I watched that, the word crisper came to mind because last year we talked all about, okay, he's really slow and mechanical. And I mentioned the dreaded word, the yips, at one point earlier this year, and I said it looks like he has the yips. When he just has time to see something, and think about it too much. The motion gets really slow and mechanical, elongated, whatever poor word you want to throw there, and it looks bad. This tight window throw was like, hey, I see the guy. There's about 4 defenders that could make a play on the ball if I don't throw it right now, and he just got rid of it. And it wasn't necessarily a pure jump throw, I don't think, the one that you've been touting for him, but it just looked way more athletic. Like, he has these throws in him if he's not overthinking things.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think he's kind of more of a reactionary type of player. I know the one you're probably thinking of in the preseason with the Yips was he had an open corner route. The guy's got 5 steps of separation, and you can tell he's just thinking his way through the motion and through the throw, and leaves it miles short. So I'm with you. I think he's he is an athletic guy. Better when he's kind of playing an Aaron Rodgers style of moving around and playing with a good bounce and then just reacting and playing. I think that's kind of what you get sometimes down in the red zone. There is shoot, I got to see this thing and get it out. There's no thought involved. So we'll see if he can build on last week and keep it rolling, because he does have some good football in him, as we've seen throughout the years. Just got to be more consistent.
When you know that is where a guy succeeds, right? And last week you and I talked about, hey, you do a good job, Zach, of telling me where guys' weaknesses are and the coverage that beats this type of quarterback and how to set guys up. We were ready to give you a defensive coordinator job to go slow these guys down, because it seems like you have a good feel for what makes them tick and what leads to struggles for some of these guys. But on the other end, if you're working in Bortles' favor and you're an offensive coordinator and you have a guy that is thinking through too many things, we hear cliches all the time. Hey, give the guys some easy throws, give them some screens, build some confidence, which does feel more cliche to me. But is there something to, what can you do? How do you get this out of Bortles more? You see this entire game against Baltimore. Okay, so how do we go into next week's game and say, okay, we got to do that again? We have to put him in position to do this again, to play fast, to play athletic, and to not fall back into what he was looking like at times earlier this year and last year when he was so mechanical and slow.
Right, yeah. I don't know if I have a good answer for it, or if there's a reason why he does do that, but they are doing a good job. You said the quote-unquote, easy throws. They're moving the pocket a lot, getting him out on the move, and then their concepts seem to match up with how what he's comfortable with seeing, and he's a very good at kind of across the board type of reads where he's more reacting to what the defense is doing. So no matter what the coverage is, I'm starting on the right side. We've talked about this a bunch. Pure progression type plays to where he's reacting, boom, 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 instead of basically cutting the field in half and saying, here, go 1 to 2. I think he does play a little bit better when he's reacting to the defense, no matter what the coverage style is. He's not great at just, dissecting pre-snap and dicing you up like a Dalton or Brady or those guys. So I think some of those have been those plays, and he's just taking care of the ball when he is getting to number 2 and number 3. He's checking the ball down a little bit quicker and not taking some of those risks.
So I don't know if they've just truly instilled in him too, look, we have a good defense, and I'm sure that helps a little bit. Their defense in at least 2 out of the 3 games now, they dominated Houston in week 1, dominated Baltimore here in week 3. Week 2, it was the Tennessee offensive line again that was the story. Did a really nice job against that Jacksonville defensive front. But I don't know if that is a factor as well, because you kept saying, hey, he's not making the big mistakes. And maybe it's like, hey, we're in these games, and I got to trust my defense. Let's just make some good decisions and live another day here.
It's showing up on some of the, 1st and 10 play actions. You're hoping to get a single high defense and a run heavy formation, and they come out and cover 2. Baltimore plays a lot of cover 2. He wasn't even messing with trying to fit that thing into the intermediate level. It was almost like a predetermined type check down, and next thing you know, it's 2nd and 2 and you're moving. So you're right. I mean, I'm sure that it's been, kind of beaten over the head like, hey, let's check this thing down. Let's just keep this thing going because our defense is playing so good.
Yeah, so that was good to see. I want to see him build on this. I like what Jacksonville's building because that defense is really coming along. I know they want to be this run-first type of team and let Bortles manage things, but he still has to make just enough plays down the field. I like how you're describing it, right? He's making those good decisions early, first down, and taking care of the ball. So it seems like if they can keep the game manageable, he might be okay this year. I mean, everybody just wrote him off as a disaster, but if they keep manageable games defensively and with the run game, is he going to be okay or reasonable?
I think so. That final preseason game that he played, I believe the second half, the one that Chad Henne started, it looked like a different guy. Like he had kind of gotten a little fire lit under him after potentially losing his job to Chad Henne. So I think there was something that kind of came out of him then, and we're seeing maybe just a more focused and more preparation and those things. He's working on his motion tirelessly, I'm sure, to keep that thing tight. So if he can keep it going, they're very, very respectable team and potentially a force to maybe get in the playoffs.
All right, staying in the AFC South with the other interesting quarterback, it's Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans. We've talked about Deshaun quite a bit, dating back to pre-draft and all of the different things we've seen from Watson. Talked about him a little bit last week. He played against Cincinnati on Thursday Night Football, and I thought, we saw a lot of the same things. We keep saying, hey, we've seen a lot of the same things that we saw at Clemson as far as style goes. I think his dropping his eyes in the pocket and this and that. I think this was the first game where we saw some of the big-time throw stuff. There were times at Clemson where he'd miss a throw, and then it's like, boom, big-time throw, we're back in this thing. That's what this Sunday felt like against New England. Seam routes and out-of-structure plays and all these different things. So let's dive in. What'd you think of Watson, the good, the bad, and the ugly? Because there was a little bit of all of that against New England on Sunday.
Yeah, you got pretty much every spectrum of throws and misses and all those things from him in one game. And I'm with you. You finally got to see some of those intermediate type throws that he made so well at Clemson. The throw, maybe the best throw of the week was the back shoulder on the corner route. The defender's playing inside or outside, beating him to the corner, and so he puts it on his back shoulder. And
I loved that throw. They showed it.
Was great.
Dan Fouts did a really good job. I think it was Dan Fouts on the broadcast replay, breaking it down and showing right at the break. You see the corner route, and it's covered perfectly. And I just love the creativity to be like, hey, I'm going to back shoulder this.
Yeah.
Do you think is it common? Sorry to interrupt again, Zach, but is it common to back shoulder a corner like that? Because most of the time that's a go route, right? It's a go route, and you just know, hey, we're going to build in the back shoulder. How common is it to take a corner route and throw it like that?
I didn't see it I didn't even know it was possible until my rookie year. I was in New England, and Tom Brady did it to, I think, Aaron Hernandez in a preseason game, week 2 of the preseason in Atlanta. And I saw him throw a back shoulder corner out because the defender was beating him to the corner. And I personally had never seen it. I didn't even know it was possible to try to do that. And it's in a very advanced level throw. I mean, we've seen Rodgers do it a handful of times, but for Watson to see that and make that type of throw as a rookie, that was some incredible stuff. And you just don't see it very much to kind of answer your question.
Brady had it week 2, same thing with Gronk. Gronk actually had the defender on top of the route. I think it was week 2, and then he dropped it in the end zone. Brady actually put it in a really good spot there too. But the old corner route, back shoulder. So that one was really good. What else as far as Watson's game, as far as the good and the bad?
Yeah, I think you're seeing him make a few more out of structure plays than he did in college. In terms of throwing the ball, he would take off in college, and you'd see him pick up 10 yards with his legs. He's extending it a little better and making some big throws, within out of the pocket. And we saw one that he scrambled far to the left and then fired it about 50 yards in the air back to the right for a gain of 25.
That was an incredible throw.
I don't know how he got the strength on it to do that. So that was good. And then you are seeing the misses and some of those things that he's got to be more clean on for the style of play that he is. And we've talked about kind of the timing and rhythm passer and winning pre-snap with him. And if that's his style, he's got to hit, all of those high percentage type throws at a better rate. So, but gosh, the plays under pressure and kind of out of structure are what's been good so far, because it obviously he's playing behind a leaky O-line and just a kind of a different offense in general.
Yeah, so the between the back shoulder corner, the one that you said was about 50 yards in the air back across the field, which, by the way, I could rant for about 5 minutes because people like to say you never throw across your body or you never throw this or that, and I'm of the mind it's not that if it works it was a good decision, but the decision depends on where people are. Like
right.
When Brett Favre makes a throw back across his body in the NFC Championship and there's a defender there, that was a bad play. When
right.
Patrick Mahomes throws back across his body and there's not a defender there, it's a good play. Like, if it works, it's a good play.
Right.
It has to do with what's
be rewarded
happening.
For having the vision to see that's happening. Yeah, I'm with
Absolutely. You. So this Watson play, I've already seen people say, well, that's never going to work if you do this or that. It's like, well, if there's not a defender there, it is a good play. And now, if there was a defender there, it'd be a bad decision. But you make your decision based off what the defense is doing. So that play by Watson was incredible. Had another seam route for a touchdown as well. The two real bad plays, interception, I don't know what he was looking at on this interception, essentially threw it directly to Stephon Gilmore. I think he was trying to back shoulder one as well, but it was an out and up, and the timing was all off. There was something just really off about that play. I thought it was a poor decision by Watson, and he also fumbled in the pocket as well. So as much as he was a magician avoiding sacks and getting out of difficult situations and making plays, which he'd made a ton of, also had a bad fumble that he got away with as well. So, again, there was a lot of good and bad, but, man, as far as the big plays go, we hadn't seen that in the preseason or in the first 2 weeks of the season, so I thought that was good to see. You got to see what his potential really looks like.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That was the first game you're like, okay, maybe he's, started to feel a little bit more, because I don't think we saw really any big-time throws. You can probably count maybe one or two throughout the preseason and the first couple weeks. So that was positive to see. Hopefully he can kind of build on that. The offense is gonna look better as they get going and they kind of say, okay, here's what he is. We're gonna get him in empty a lot. We're gonna do a lot of move the pocket, bootlegs, something that obviously with Tom Savage was non-existent. So as everybody gets rolling in kind of his style of play, it'll get a little bit better.
We haven't discussed this before, but it seems like the last couple of weeks there was a lot of, when they play press coverage, he'd play a lot of just one-on-one with DeAndre Hopkins and throw a lot of curl routes against one-on-one press coverage. I feel like that's just not a common strategy against press man. I feel like you generally want to open up, you want to scheme open, more open throws and run more rubs and picks. I feel like they're just playing this ISO game a lot of times against press with Hopkins, who's great, but that led to, some 4-yard gains and 5-yard gains, and running curls against press always feels like a little low percentage and risky to me. Is that something? Is that out of the ordinary, or is that,
I think with his style, that getting those defined looks with an isolation route on the backside, and it's that's what he's comfortable seeing, and he knows where to go pre-snap, and he can play in rhythm. So I think that they are playing a little to his strength with that. But if you're living on just firing a bunch of stop routes on the outside versus press, that's tough living in the NFL. That's why we see Tom Brady and those guys really work the middle of the field. And so while it's good and it can work sometimes, taking all those shots, like you're saying, on 6-yard hitches and 10-yard stops can get pretty difficult. So we'll see how much they can do it. But conversely, if teams start sitting on those, then you run by them. So there's that constant game too. Of playing that, so it can work out. But I'm with you. You got to dominate the middle of the field if you want to be a consistent quarterback in the NFL.
Just something to keep an eye on. Overall, the grade I think ended up similar for Watson, around average for this game, because as great as some of the plays were, we mentioned the fumble, the interception. There was a couple plays in the fourth quarter. He just he missed an open crossing route that really could have sealed the deal for Houston. So. Still leaving a few plays on the table, and we're being a little picky here because that's what we do, because we're dissecting every single play. But I still come out of that game saying, all right, there's a lot of good there. and a lot of good that we hadn't seen before. So I'm taking that as a positive overall for Watson. Let's fly around the league. A few quick hitters on some of the quarterbacks. We got 5 or 6 guys, and then we'll wrap it up. So Kirk Cousins, Sunday Night Football against the Oakland Raiders, started the season slow. He's still one of our lowest graded guys so far through 3 weeks because he really did struggle weeks 1 and 2. But yeah, he was much better, pretty sharp against the Oakland Raiders on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, it looked more like last season's form. Ball was coming out pretty crisp. We saw him hit some down the field shots in stride touchdowns, Vernon Davis and on the seam. So you saw a little bit more of what he kind of looked like when he was playing at his best last season, avoided the big mistakes. So yeah, positive for him because the first 2 weeks were just not very good.
How about Jacoby Brissett? Because we didn't hit every AFC South quarterback, but he's going up against the Seattle Seahawks next week. It's going to be Sunday Night Football. They grabbed Brissett just before the season to kind of just fill in until Andrew Luck gets back, and he's been pretty impressive through 2 weeks, his 2 starts.
I'm with you. Yeah, I like him. I think he can definitely play. And coming out of NC State, he wasn't the most just accurate pinpoint guy. I think he's gotten more accurate since he's been in the NFL, just working and you read about all the off the field stuff with him that so he's working on his game, and I think it's definitely showed up because he's got great instincts in the pocket, and he's definitely a progression type passer that can take off and run. But he looks more accurate, and shoot, for being there a couple weeks, he looks pretty comfortable in that offense.
So I know you watched that. I know you watched all the throws very closely, but especially the Eagles-Giants game, Carson Wentz versus Eli Manning. We talked about Wentz in detail last week, if you guys want to go back and listen to that. But what do you think about Wentz this week and the Eagles and their game plan and their win against the Giants?
Very cautious with Wentz this week. A lot of screens, a lot of quick bootlegs and getting him out on the move and a lot of quick games. So they kind of knew turnovers were going to be a way to lose that game, and he was just being a little risky the first couple of weeks with the ball, and so they simplified it and got the ball out of his hand and some more defined looks, but still played consistent throughout, was accurate what he was asked to do, didn't throw the ball a whole lot. So, did kind of what was there and then obviously made a big play down the stretch to get them in field goal range there.
Yeah, he was leading the league in turnover-worthy plays through 2 weeks, did a much better job of taking care of the ball with, as you said, a little bit more conservative game plan. Eli Manning, it seemed like, after a couple pretty rough weeks there too, made some improvement, and I think Odell Beckham certainly helped that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you. The Sterling Shepard play
yep.
Over the middle that he fit into a tight window over the middle. He threw the ball just overall better. I think the protection, the plan, everything just flowed a little bit better with what they were doing. The Eagles' style of defense kind of sets up for some of those in-breaking slants to be hit that they hit so often. So a lot better from Eli this week, and Odell Beckham. Guy's a absolute freak, so they just got to get him about 20 targets a game.
So Russell Wilson, I wanted to talk about him a little bit last week. Week 2 against the San Francisco 49ers, he had 4 turnover-worthy plays. Did not throw an interception though. It was just a rough game overall for Wilson, and we've seen that at times throughout his career. There's always like a stretch of play where Wilson just does not look good, but he always seems to bounce back. And Sunday against the Titans, I know they lost, but they had to get into a shootout situation, and he made a number of big plays when he needed to. So I think just as a player, he's still fine. He has his bit of a roller coaster sometimes, but how much is the pass protection, going to come back to bite? Is this going to be the year? This is like our yearly question. Is this the year where the offensive line completely comes back to bite in Seattle?
I just think he's so good and instinctive at getting out of enough of those situations. There's going to be obviously the struggles that we see, but the guy's just so good at getting out of those. I don't think it's going to totally kill him, but you are going to see some of those clunker weeks like we saw week 2. But last week was better, not throwing it as accurately and as I guess, crisp theme of the week here, but he, his motion looks a little bit longer this year for whatever reason, and it's noticeably dropping down, and I think, he's suffering a little bit accuracy-wise on some, 10-yard out routes that he should hit and things like that the ball location's just been off just a little bit, but definitely got back on the right track a little bit at the end of that game last week.
Yeah, again, in the week 2 thing, it was like he was just throwing jump balls in the end zone. He was dancing around in clean pockets. He was, overthrowing balls up the seam. I told you, 4 turnover-worthy plays, and that was just uncharacteristic, sloppy play by Wilson, although in week 2 he did come back and make the game-winning throw and the usual Russell Wilson magic. So he still has that ability to bounce back when he has poor games. And again, a step forward, I think, even in the loss against Tennessee. The one last guy I want to talk about, Cam Newton. Sam Monson and I definitely talked a lot about the Panthers, and Cam, go check that out on the Week 3 review podcast. We talked more about the strategy and what they're trying to do with the run game and all these different things. But as far as Cam Newton and what they're doing with the pass game, you made the comment to me before we got on the air here, he just looks a little uncomfortable in what they're trying to do. They're trying to make him into this, quick game guy and all that stuff. And so far this season, as far as 3-step drops, they're up 6% from what he did last year. So that's your quick game stuff. 5-step drops, that's up 8%. And your 7-step drops are down 14%. So my point is they are trying to get the ball out of his hand quicker. They're trying to do more of the short stuff, the quick game. And as we've mentioned on the pod before, that is where he is most inaccurate. He was the most inaccurate short game thrower that we charted all of last season. How is this Panthers offense coming together and completely acknowledging that, hey, Cam is probably playing hurt right now as well?
Yeah, I think just does not look comfortable, like you said at the beginning there. He just nothing's kind of flowing with the offense. The quick passing game, he's missing McCaffrey on a few throws. The interception that he hits, a lot of his underneath stuff is overthrows, which can be bad as well on some of those, slants and things over the middle that go high off a guy's hands that we saw last week on McCaffrey's angle route there. But it's just not flowing that well. He's not hitting his deep shots, which he's got to hit. Last week, basically overthrew, I think, every single one except for a McCaffrey kind of out and up the left side. But he's overthrowing a lot of them, not really giving his guys a chance to make a plays on some of them as well. They're just 5-yard misses in front. So he's got to just kind of get cut. We talked about it just before we got on, but he hasn't really played that much. He was out in the OTAs. He was out all of camp. So just finding a little rhythm. I don't think it's too much to be worried about. I think he'll kind of find it, and that offense will kind of find their identity here pretty soon. Yeah,
that one out and up to McCaffrey, that was a good way to use McCaffrey down the field. I love it.
Awesome.
But the short game, just very inconsistent. Passer rating of 54 on passes from 0 to 9 yards. That's where every other quarterback's passer rating, because it's the short game, and there's usually a few touchdowns in there. Everybody else is in the 80s, 90s, 100s, and he's at 54. So you got to make the easy ones, and I think that's always been one of Cam's issues. And they're trying to scheme up some easier ones for him. It's just not there right now. Some really bad decisions against the Saints as well. Late passes into coverage and just misreading coverage and a fumble in the pocket, so it has to take care of the ball better as well. And that's a Saints defense that was historically bad for 2 games.
Yeah.
Over 140 passer rating against that defense weeks 1 and 2 against Sam Bradford and Tom Brady, and then this week Cam really struggled. So a little alarming given what the expectations are for Cam Newton.
Yeah, not quite panic button, but definitely like, hey, let's get something going. Yeah,
just
definitely
alarming. Well, this was fun, Zach. I liked getting your take on the comeback stuff and the mentality and all those different things. Did you ever have a great comeback? That I like to give you a chance to brag. Can you brag a little bit? Give me like your best comeback.
There's not much to do.
Come on, you were a great college quarterback. Give me something good.
Yeah, we had some comebacks against Texas A&M. I think one that sticks out. One against Kansas State, but I had definitely a few where there was we had to make some plays to get down into field goal range and then kick a last second field goal. But A lot of those shootouts were back and forth, and sometimes we ended up on the wrong end of scoring 42 and giving up 45. So that wasn't good. We needed to make a few more, but there was definitely
12,
some mixed in there.
That's Big 12
you gotta
football.
love it. Yeah, you gotta love it. Usually, when you get to this point, you only remember the bad stuff. It's hard to remember the good stuff. It's those demons that still haunt you from back in the day. So there was definitely some good mixes in there, but some of those guys just honestly they have just innate ability to just click when it's on, and that's why they are who they are.
I love it. That's why I like to get into your head and see what it was like, to be able to make those comebacks, even if you didn't have as many as Brady and Rodgers and some of those other guys. So, again, having a lot of fun over at the PFF podcast here. That was episode 2 of the week. We'll have a mailbag edition with Sam Monson and I. Be sure to get your questions over to podcasts, that's plural, podcasts, at profootballfocus.com. And then, of course, a week 4 preview edition later in the week. Don't forget to get to profootballfocus.com/PFF-offers. That is the page that you want to go for our very best offers for PFF Edge. We have a couple partners over there, and that is the very best deal that we offer at PFF. So get over there right now, profootballfocus.com/PFF-offers. And don't forget about our friends at draft.com and DraftKings. That's sponsoring the show. I just had like a twitch on my arm. That was fun. You don't have to edit that out. We're all real here, Taylor. I just had some sort of numbness in my left arm. That was fun.
Jeez.
It's not as serious as it sounds, guys. Don't worry. But send the love over at podcasts@profootballfocus.com if you guys are really concerned. I think I'm okay enough. So that'll do it.
Is that the itch that Case Keenum was the number 1 quarterback over Brady? Is that what that might be itching at you?
That hurt a little bit. That did hurt a little bit. I thought this was a week for Brady to be team of the week quarterback. He missed it by about 0.4 to the great Case Keenum. You can't slow down Case Keenum. You can only hope to contain that guy. Anyway, it's been a great week 3, guys. It's the Big Time Throwcast. Follow Zach at Zach_Robinson5. I am at PFF_Steve, and we will talk to you guys next time.